This video is brought to you by Paperlike. After nearly a decade, the entry-level iPad, or the cheapest full-sized iPad you can get, has been redesigned, and this iPad 10th gen is definitely a compelling but also very interesting device, especially if you are a student looking to enter the Apple ecosystem or the iPad lineup without breaking the bank. And first and foremost, I guess we'll touch on design, because that is the sort of pivotal aspect of this device here. It takes after the iPad Air, which of course copied its design from the iPad Pro, although it is a little bit thicker thanks to a non-laminated display, which we will get to in a moment here. But we got Touch ID up top, which is nice. Definitely a feature that I think makes this device look more modern. Of course, no more home button. We have sort of uniform bezels surrounding the display. We also have the smart connector on the side, which works with the Magic Keyboard Folio, which I'll touch on later. And finally, we have USB Type-C, which is so nice to see here. It's so much better for charging and data transfer. It keeps your cables a little more consistent, or not even consistent. Like, you can use one cable with your laptop and your iPad and eventually phone next year if the next iPhone has USB-C. Crossing my fingers there. And we also have stereo speakers on here, one on either side. There's not four, there's only two drivers, but this makes for a nicer music listening experience here. I can play some non-copyrighted sounds, which is always wonderful. But it's not that the sound is necessarily much better, it's just more even because it comes from both sides, which is definitely something I enjoy. So yeah, just more even sound coming out of this device. What else here? We also have new colors. I can kind of line them up here. I did do this in my unboxing video if you haven't already watched that, but we have this pink. We also have a yellow, which is, I don't know, some days I like it, some days I'm like, it's a bit too much. We have a safe silver color as well. This is probably the one that I would go for just for the sake of neutrality and just this device going with my clothes and other accessories and stuff. And then we have a blue, which is not unlike that of the iPad Air 5, maybe a bit lighter. I'll probably be doing a comparison at some point here, but these are the colors here. They're colorful for sure. They kind of remind me of highlighters that you might use when you're in grade school, which is very student oriented. Maybe that's why they sort of went for these colors here. But yeah, I personally like the pink the best. It's a really nice hot pink. I thought I wasn't gonna like it, but in person it's really, really pretty. It's sort of like this rose-ish pink, I would say here. Not too much, but not too little. But again, though, silver is definitely a safe choice here, which is why I think they chose to make one here. And this just reminds me of the 2018 iPad Pro. I love that thing, especially with the camera module here. It looks identical. And speaking of the camera module, this is a, let me just zoom in here for your reference. This is a 12 megapixel sensor, which is capable of shooting 4K video, which is nice. 12 megapixel photos as well. So yeah, you got a camera upgrade here as well. So taking pictures of documents and such is definitely going to be a bit better if you tend to do that. I remember in high school when I'd use my iPad Air 2, there'd be some projects where I would use the camera on my iPad. So people say, like, you know, why would you want a camera on your iPad? Well, students, you know, might not be able to use their phones, or maybe it's just more convenient to shoot a photo or a video on here and directly drop that into whatever project you're working on, whether it's an iMovie or something else. Beyond the color variants and the back camera module, though, the display is definitely interesting here. It is the same size as the iPad Air, 10.9 inches, but the display tech is a bit different. This is an sRGB panel opposed to a P3 panel. I think it's still an LCD, but the color calibration is a bit different. Maybe these are cheaper. sRGB just means there are less colors being displayed. P3 is more color accurate, but I'm not gonna lie, like, for most people, especially students who aren't concerned about if the blue is the bluest it can be, this is gonna look good enough, especially if you are consuming content or just taking notes, which is something we'll talk about as well here. It's also 60 Hertz, no ProMotion. Of course, the iPad Air doesn't even have that. And it is pretty bright. It's not like the brightest display I've seen, but it doesn't need to be. This is an entry-level iPad after all, and it's gonna be more than good enough for most of your use cases anyway. Something more interesting though is that this is a non-laminated panel, meaning there is an air gap in between the LCD and the glass. And this is the best one I've seen so far. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but like there is like a bit of a gap again between the glass and the actual display, so you're not literally touching the pixels like you are with an iPhone, for example. But the sucky part about laminated displays is that when you break the glass, The display is kind of broken as well, or it's not broken unless you decide to scrape the glue layer off in between the broken glass and the LCD, or in this case, this OLED display, which is a very tricky and expensive process to repair. So if you break the glass on a non-laminated display, you can replace the glass real easily and still have the LCD intact, unless it's really badly damaged. But I think this is done A, to save on manufacturing costs, but also two, this is sort of a student's iPad, especially in the future, because Apple is still selling an older gen iPad. This will probably go down in price in the future, so they probably plan on selling this for quite a while. And if you want to put iPads in the hands of students or people who are a little less careful, repair costs are definitely a concern. So even though this is technically a downgrade, or it makes the overall device thicker, I believe, compared to the iPad Air, it does make replacing the screen a lot less costly. Something else I want to touch on that's interesting is the camera placement, at least the front-facing one. It is now landscape-oriented, placed in the middle here rather than up top. And I really like this. As somebody that likes to do FaceTime calls with friends for school and also my own leisure, I more so find myself using the iPad in this sort of landscape orientation anyway, so it's nice not to have to look off to the side here when you're doing video chats in Zoom or FaceTime or whatever you're doing. And yeah, it just looks more natural. It's a better placement. I hope that they do this or implement a camera like this or a camera placement like this in future iPad Airs and the iPad Pro. But maybe they won't for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know why they started off with this with the entry-level iPad. Maybe it's an experiment, or maybe they consider the fact that a lot of people want to use this iPad sort of like a laptop. So I don't know. We've yet to see. But yeah, it's definitely a nice feature here. Nothing that I really expected, to be honest. I don't really pay attention to leaks, but yeah, it is a welcome addition and I'm happy to see it. Something I'm not so happy about though is the lack of Apple Pencil 2nd gen support. I thought this was a given if this was receiving an iPad Pro style design, and the best part about the Apple Pencil 2nd gen is not the fact that you can double tap on the side to switch your tool, but the fact that you can just charge on the side of your device and not lose the pencil. It always has sort of a home. And for me, I'm someone that probably struggles with object permanence and just remembering to do things like I'm not gonna remember to charge my pencil. This is, I don't know, a bit of a deal breaker to me. I mean, if you are in the market for an iPad and this is just in your budget, and if I haven't already said this, I mean, the Apple Pencil 1st gen is functionally the same, or at least when it comes to pressure sensitivity and latency and all of that, no different from the 2nd gen pencil. You really are only getting the convenience when it comes to charging and not losing your pencil with the 2nd gen, on top of the double tap thing, which is nice if you want to switch in between like an eraser tool and a pen tool. But it doesn't make that much of a difference, I would say here. I just wish, again, that they would have given us the choice to choose between these two, whether you already had one of these or if you wanted the convenience when it comes to the additional features that you get with the 2nd gen. I digress. I think I've said the same thing like 25 times. Not very happy with the situation, but at least we get the Apple Pencil in here. I'm not saying you should be happy, but I mean, like, it's the bare minimum, I'm not gonna lie, but still, this is still an excellent device for note-taking and drawing and sketching and just bare essentials, if you will, especially if you're a student, if you're using GoodNotes or Notability, etc., etc. And if you are considering getting an iPad for note-taking, if you're a student or sketching or drawing or whatever, whatever model you get, you gotta get a paper-like screen protector for it. And they are, of course, today's video sponsor. But in all seriousness, I cannot use an iPad without one of these. And this is their Generation 2.1, which offers even better clarity. Of course, with any texturized screen protector, you're gonna lose a little bit of the display quality. And there was really never an issue before, but it looks even better now. So, it looks like even less apparent that you have a screen protector on here, and the benefits are just amazing. You get this wonderful papery feel. I'll even hold the iPad up so you can hear little ASMR for you. I love this. I grew up taking notes and sketching and drawing with actual paper, pens, and pencils, so I need this because when I'm using an iPad Pro or an iPad in general, want to use the Apple Pencil. So this is a must-have accessory. So yeah, I'll leave a link in the video description if you're interested in checking these out. Something else that makes the 10th gen interesting is its exclusive new accessory, the Magic Keyboard Folio, which attaches via two parts. One is like the kickstand part here, which goes on the back. Voila. And then we have the part that connects to the smart connector on the bottom here, like so. It's pretty strong as well. I mean, you can make this fly off if you really try to. I just did in an outtake, but yeah, it's a pretty strong connection here. And yeah, here we are. This looks very much like, and I'll just zoom in here so you can see the keys a little better. It definitely resembles more of a laptop situation here, especially since you can sort of make it kick back a little more like so. This is something that I like opposed to the Magic Keyboard, and I'm gonna move these iPads out of the way because I need more space for this thing. I didn't like with the Magic Keyboard that you couldn't push the display back a little more because often I don't want to be kind of like, I don't know, using it at more of a 90-degree angle, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, this, just looking at this, it reminds me of like a Chromebook. It reminds me of a small laptop, the MacBook Air 11-inch, especially with the function row of keys here, which is the first time I've seen this in any Apple keyboard accessory. We have brightness, we have dictation, we have media controls, and a lock button as well. The keyboard is also the same quality, same Magic Keyboard depth and click and all of that. The trackpad, of course, is wonderful as well, just like the one you get with the Magic Keyboard and trackpad for iPad Air and iPad Pro. I guess the one not great thing about this is it's harder to use in your lap, but again, for me, I wish an accessory like this was available for the iPad Pro, although there are great third-party accessories, which I'll bring up later in this video. Next up, let's talk about performance and storage though, but real quick, look at this. I attached the Folio backwards, the keyboard part at least, and it folds nice and neatly to the back here, so you can put your iPad down like this, like it doesn't even have anything on it. I really like that. That is not something you can do with the Magic Keyboard, but I digress. Here are the Geekbench scores for the A14 chip found inside. You don't have to know what these numbers mean, but they are pretty good. And this is the chip that is found in the iPhone 12, which I think is still being sold. So it's definitely fast. It's going to push your iPadOS experience just fine. You don't really need any more if you are in the consumer segment for this product. It's gonna play games decently. It's gonna surf the web decently. And of course, too, you can do multitasking as well. Here, you don't need Stage Manager on here. I don't even think that's equipped in this version of iPadOS on this iPad. I digress though. The experience is fine, but if you wanna do more heavy tasks like some video editing, some photo editing, I mean, you can do it on here. Honestly, I think you can get away with it even more so than you could before, but you're definitely gonna wanna consider an M1 or an M2 device in the iPad Air lineup or the iPad Pro lineup. What else here? Oh yes, storage. This is a 256 gig model, but this does start out at 64 gigs. I don't think that's enough as of 2022 and 2023, but I'm sure it keeps the costs down though, especially if you're buying these in bulk for your school or whatever. And a lot of stuff is done on the web anyway. So 64 gigs, I guess, is just barely enough for, you know, having some local files, some applications, but you know, with the size of apps nowadays and media and all of that, 256 gigs is probably what you're gonna wanna go for in any device of any form factor, phone, laptop, you know, desktop, especially tablet as well. But again, you know, it is what it is. And if you wanna get this iPad for $419 with education pricing or $449, you're gonna have to go with a very small amount of internal storage. And speaking of price, that's the last topic I wanna cover in this video here. Say you go with a 64 gig pink one, Wi-Fi model, no engraving, with the Apple Pencil, what else here? And the Magic Keyboard Folio here, I'm gonna add that. You are looking at a total cost of $648, and that is before tax. I believe this is like $698, which is, I don't know, pretty expensive, especially considering if you hop over to eBay here and you look up MacBook Air M1, you can find one for $599, that's crazy. $749, $550, $630. I'm seeing pricing more so around $650, maybe even $700 more often, but I digress. I mean, like, you get a lot more here, more power, an included keyboard, a bigger display, all of that. And I don't wanna do like the Mac versus iPad thing right now. That's definitely for a different video. I think I'm gonna do a comparison between this and the Magic Keyboard Folio and the MacBook Air M1. But you know, like, you're paying a lot for a 64 gig iPad with this accessory, albeit the iPad itself isn't like horrifically priced. The keyboard, on the other hand, definitely is. This is $229. I think it's overpriced, especially when you can get the Logitech Combo Touch here, which I'll show you. And here it is. As you can see, it looks familiar here. Keyboard, function row of keys, and a trackpad, and a place to put your pencil that solves the whole where am I gonna put my pencil, I don't wanna lose it situation, and it's $159. So it might not be first party quality, but it's nice, and I think it's a little more durable as well. You have these rubber sides here, but yeah, it's a much better deal here, so you're gonna be spending less money. So I'm not saying like don't buy an iPad. If you want an iPad, go for an iPad, but yeah, I mean, just consider the fact that this setup here, especially if you go with a 256 gig one, it's gonna cost you comparable money to that of a MacBook Air M1, which I think is a go-to device for students, especially myself. I tend to be a little more biased towards Macs and laptops as it is. So that is the situation here. I hope that this video was helpful. This is a very interesting device for sure, but it really is true to the original iPad form. You know, I'm not gonna lie here and say I was really impressed when I saw what this had to offer, especially the lack of second gen pencil support, but it is a nice device. I like the color scheme. I like the idea of it. And, you know, focusing on the iPad Pro a lot has me kind of forgetting what the iPad originally was. It was supposed to be for media consumption and just like, you know, it was this size, relatively speaking, you know, around 10 inches. But I digress once again here. That about wraps up this video. The 10th gen iPad is a very interesting device, to say the least. It is decently spec'd, although a little confusing in some places with the pencil situation. But there's a lot to like here. The display is decent, once again, a little easier to repair, like I said as well. The camera's nice. The performance is just enough for what you want it to do. The price point isn't half bad either. But is this a device that I personally would use? No, but I'm an enthusiast, and a lot of you guys watching are enthusiasts as well. This is the people's iPad. This is what people go in and think of when they buy an iPad. They're not trying to spend 800 bucks on an iPad Pro, which they're not even gonna use, and that's a whole nother topic for a different video. So, I mean, it's decent. I'm gonna cover this more. I think it is a worthwhile device to consider. But again, though, you have to know what you want, and I wouldn't spend more money on this, especially if a MacBook would suit you better, or a different iPad would suit you better. The iPad Air 4, for example, solves a lot of the issues that I have with this tablet, and it has the same chip. So that's another video as well. I have a lot more content coming, so stay tuned for that. And as always, I'm Noah, and I will catch you all in the next one.